Mamedi, the CEO and co-founder of Truecaller. Hi, Alan, and it's great to have you joining us here on The Big Picture. India is currently ranked 155th in the world when it comes to mobile broadband internet access. And when the chairman of Reliance, when he was making his speech in the annual general meeting today, he said that with the Jio launch, he expected India to actually break in to the top 10. So clearly, making information more accessible seems to be the clear message that RIL has put out. What could this mean for a country like India, Alan?
Yeah, thank you, Ron, for having me here. I think the announcement that Mr. Ambani made today is huge. I think, not only is the price plan very compelling for a much larger demography in India, but if they can cover 90% of the population, then that's a huge step forward to digitalize India. And, I've seen people share their speed tests on the Jio, and in many cases, it's faster than most home broadband connectivities in the US and in Europe. So, I think this is huge and probably the biggest step in one wave that I've ever seen.
Well, since you've been, since you entered the market, with the incredible company that you founded, Alan, Truecaller, would you say that this is perhaps the most important moment in India's telecom industry?
Truecaller as a service is very dependent on the data connectivity, especially having it on all the time. So for services like Truecaller and many other mobile app services, this will have a huge impact on their services. You will all of a sudden be able to enable such things that are very crucial to your business, such as notification services that has been replaced with SMS services and so forth. So, speed and reliability and coverage, that will change the game for sure for many companies, us included.
And how, since you have a global perspective, Alan, how bad was India in the past? In a sense, many are now saying that this is perhaps a watershed moment, and we can talk about the telecom industry pre-Jio and post-Jio. Since we are still in the pre-Jio sort of era, looking at when you had launched your services in India, what sort of how difficult was it for companies like yourself, especially at a time when data penetration in India has been so low and data prices have been so high?
Well, Ron, we've been around since 2010, and back then 2G was the most common connection, which made a service like Truecaller much more complicated. During the last 2-3 years, we've seen how 3G has started to take off and made our service better. But I think when I compare the connectivity in India, the 3G connectivity, it's actually pretty good. The big question is the cost. Is it affordable? The second thing is the speed that you get with 4G, which is, that will of course make things much better. But I think the cost will have a much bigger impact, and the coverage of it, making it available for 90% of the population. That is a much more exciting aspect that we look at.
Since Reliance Jio promises to break down the information barrier, what could this mean for entrepreneurship in general? Already India is has seen one of the fastest startup markets in the world. What could this do to Indian entrepreneurship going ahead?
Well, as I said, there are a lot of services that are data dependent, and having a 4G connection on all the time will make these services much better. There are even services that might not exist in India today due to this problem. I think more entrepreneurs will discover new ideas, new business models that will work so much better if they change it a bit, thanks to the data connectivity. So, I definitely think that we will see current services working much better and new services popping up, new entrepreneurs taking on new ideas or ideas that might work in certain markets and tweak them. So it's a very exciting moment. for sure.
You know, we've seen how Uber has disrupted the traditional taxi industry. In fact, many are saying that Uber and companies like Uber represent the shared economy model, and that is going to have an implication even on the existing brick and mortar manufacturing industry. But when you look at the fact that now suddenly, and in some years down the line, perhaps 90% of India's population will have access to some sort of data on their handsets, which are some of the industries that you feel, you know, could sort of see a major transformation, whether it's banking or healthcare? You know, are there some industries that immediately come to your mind that may change in the coming few years due to wider spread of data?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And you know, today I think almost every sector has a digital element, and all of them will improve over time, for sure. Banking is something that when we look at you know, the different wallets and such that are growing in India, I think these kind of banking services are much needed, but they are hard to access for the majority of the people. So banking is definitely one of those services. Banking and retail, I think, are those two sectors that will see a huge incremental growth in the near future. But then, of course, you have from a consumer point of view, you have the streaming services, you have educational tools that all of a sudden becomes accessible, gaming and so forth. So there are a lot of different sectors that we'll see a very strong uptake on.
You know, Truecaller has had a tremendous run in India since you made your debut here back in 2010. You know, now with 4G connectivity and better connectivity, and where even the incumbents we've seen over the last few months slashing their 3G prices and their 4G rates, and actually beginning to invest more in infrastructure in such an environment. And Truecaller has seen a remarkable growth going forward. Give us a bit of a growth trajectory that you expect for Truecaller.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, we've been very fortunate to have a very strong organic growth in the larger cities. What we've been working a lot with is to get growth in the smaller cities as well, where data connectivity hasn't always been there. So, you know, we foresee a much stronger growth across the whole country. That's definitely for sure. And Truecaller in itself is working much better if you have a data connectivity that is constantly on. And for various reasons, people disable data connectivity. In many cases, it's because of the consumption that many apps use in the background. And data is so expensive, so you rather turn it off. And I hope to see that this is a problem of yesterday, so to say.
Right. You know, finally then, Alan, what could this mean also from a cybersecurity perspective, especially at a time when so many people will be logging onto the website? And as you said, banking is one of the sectors, you know, that could, and the very banking model may get transformed in the coming years. What does this then mean for cybersecurity in general? Because there's very little awareness, for instance, about cybersecurity in India.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think you know, if you're connected to the internet, you're more discoverable, and you become you know, a target for some hacking groups, etc. But what we can see is that a lot of smartphone users today are actually upgrading to newer versions of Android and iOS operating systems. Mm-hmm. And as long as the manufacturers keep supporting the old devices to upgrade to newer versions, I think we should all be fine, because in the end, we're all on the same kind of, we're all in the same risk zone. So I don't really see a risk when more people get connected, as long as the OEMs, the manufacturers, the operating system providers keep updating their systems and pushing consumers to actually upgrade to the latest versions.
Alan Mamedi, lovely to have you on the show, and thank you very much for taking us and giving us really a global perspective on what this could mean, and wish you all the success, and wishing Truecaller all the success in India. Thanks very much for joining us, Alan. Well, on that note,